Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel AWS DevOps Niche Level. In this video, we are going to see how to create a Lambda function in AWS. So what is a Lambda function? So Lambda is a serverless computing platform. So it is a function that executes in the backend based on a schedule or based on some event triggers. So it can be a code, it can be a piece of a code, which we call it as a function that executes in the backend. And just like our cron in Linux or a scheduled task in Windows, you can also schedule that function to be executed in the backend, right? And during some event triggers also, we can have a Lambda function to be executed. So for example, when CloudWatch is generating an alarm for any of the parameters like CPU utilization exceeding the threshold or when instance goes down, etc., as a response to that event, we can have a Lambda function executed. Right? So ideally, you can understand that it is a code which runs in the backend to perform a specific action. And we really need not worry about the compute resources, what the code would be requiring for its execution, because that will be taken care by AWS. Right? So we really need not bother about where the code will execute, in which server the code is going to execute, and how about the programming environment where the code is going to execute. We really need not worry about it. That would be taken care by AWS itself. That is the reason it is a serverless computing platform. So we can also embed the code in our favorite programming languages, because Lambda supports multitude of programming languages like Python, Node.js, Go, Java, etc. So in whichever programming language you have the code, you need to select that particular platform, and then you have to upload your code and run your code. Regarding the cost of the Lambda function, of course, Lambda is going to incur some charges, but however, the billing would be mainly based on the execution time, how much time it takes for Lambda to finish its execution, and what is the amount of memory that code is consuming for its execution. The cost is basically calculated based on these two parameters, the execution time of the code and also the amount of memory that is consumed by the code. So that is just a brief about the Lambda function. So we can directly get into the lab. So now as part of the lab, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a role for Lambda. Because if a Lambda is performing a specific function, it needs to have the required permissions. For that, I'm going to create a role for Lambda. Then we will create a Lambda function with a very simple Python program that will start the EC2 instance. Then we will validate the Lambda function. So now let's go into the lab. So I will log into my AWS console. So I'm already in the AWS console. I'm going to search for Lambda here. But before that, the first step being we have to create a role for the Lambda function, right? So for creating the role, I will go to the IAM console, the identity and access management. And here, let me create a role. And this Lambda function, whatever I'm going to create, it will be just starting an EC2 instance. So the role should have a permission of a EC2 full access. That is sufficient. So now let me go ahead and create the role. I will click roles here and I will say create role. The service will be AWS service and use case. So which service is going to basically use this role? It is Lambda, right? So I select Lambda here. So allows the Lambda function to call the AWS services on your behalf, right? So click next. And here I'm going to search for EC2 full access, because my Lambda function is just going to start the EC2 instance. So if you just give a permission with the EC2 full access, that should be sufficient. Let me click next. And I will just say, I will give a name as Lambda EC2 full access. There is a role name. Now let me go ahead and create this role. So this is our first step where we have created the role for Lambda. Now the next step is we will go ahead and create a Lambda function. We will write a simple Python program that will start the EC2 instance. So let me search for Lambda here. Lambda, run code without thinking about the servers. And let us go ahead and create a function. So I'm creating this Lambda function in the North Virginia region where my instance is running. So let me go ahead and click create function and let me give it a name, EC2 instance start function. Okay. And what is the runtime? What is my programming language? So you can see here, Lambda supports multiple programming environments. So we can have the code in .NET 6, C and PowerShell, Go 1.x, Java 17, Node.js, Python, Ruby, etc. Then it also supports the other versions like Java 11, Java 8, Node.js, 14, 16, then few other versions of Python, right? Including the Ruby 2.7. So in our case, ours being a Python program, I'm going to select Python 3.7 here, right? So now it is going to ask you to select the permissions. So with what permission the Lambda function should execute. So for that only I had created a role before. So I'm going to say use an existing role and I will select this role Lambda EC2 full access. Now let me just say create function. So this is our code interface where we can put in our code. So this is a section here wherein I'm going to add my Python code. So this is a very simple code to restart to just start the EC2 instance, right? So let me just copy this code, paste it here. So I just need to update the region and the instance ID, right? So basically our instance is running on the US East 1, North Virginia region. So first let me update the region as US hyphen East hyphen 1. Okay. And on which instance I want this Lambda function to execute? So this instance. So I'm going to grab this particular instance ID and then update it on the code here. So that is it. So what we are doing is we are importing the Boto 3. So Boto 3 is the Python SDK for AWS, right? So since ours being a Python program, then I have updated the region where this code should execute and also the instance ID. And we are just using this simple command ec2.start underscore instances to start the instance. Okay. Fine. So let me go ahead and deploy this code. And we will try to test this code. So before we do that, what I will do is I'm going to stop my existing instance so that when the Lambda function executes, it is going to start the instance, right? So I will say instance state stop instance. So the Lambda is going to start the stopped instance. Okay. So now the instance has been stopped. You can see it is the stopping process. Okay, now it is in the stop state. Now let us go ahead and execute our function. Okay, so what I will do, let me just click test here. And it is asking to create a test event. I will say test 1. Just save it. Now let us go ahead and click test again. It is going to run this function now. So you can see here, it is saying started your instances. And this is the instance it has started. Okay, and this code is executed successfully. You can see here the status, it is succeeded. Okay, so now we will just quickly verify if the instance has been started successfully. So let me go back and I will refresh my screen. So you can see here the instance is already in the running state. So our Lambda function have started the instance, right? So this is how you basically execute a Lambda function in the backend. And in this case, the action is to start the instance. Like this, based on the functionality, you can embed your code in the programming language, whatever is supported by Lambda, and you can execute the appropriate action. I hope this was clear how to configure a Lambda function. And the other point I just wanted to touch upon is the pricing, right? So as I mentioned before, the cost of the Lambda function is calculated based on the execution time and the amount of memory consumed for the execution of the code. So now you can see that parameters here. So what is the execution time? It is 797 milliseconds. Similarly, what is the maximum memory used for the code execution? It is 86 MB. So basically the cost is going to be based on these two parameters, the memory used and also the execution time. Okay. So there is a separate website for the Lambda pricing. So if I just search for, AWS Lambda pricing, it's actually going to take us to your web page. There we will get details about how the Lambda is priced based on this, the duration it has taken to execute the function and number of the requests it is handling. So you can actually refer this link, amazon.com/lambda/pricing. Here you will get more details about how the function is billed to the customers. Okay. So yeah, this is my a simple video on the Lambda function, and I hope this has helped. So team, I also wanted to update that I'm actually conducting offline training courses on AWS and DevOps. So if anyone would be interested to take the training from me, you can actually send an email to this particular email ID, and I'll be happy to provide the details about the courses. So the training mode is done online. It is an online training via Zoom, and the class recordings will be uploaded onto the Google Drive, and it will be available for your permanent access. And whether it is AWS or DevOps, it generally spans between 5 to 6 weeks of an interactive course, and it is completely focused on the hands-on lab exercises. So if anyone is interested, you can feel free to send an email to me and I'll be sharing the details. So that's all I had for this video, and I hope it was helpful. So if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, so please subscribe to my channel. And if you feel that this video would be helpful to your other known circles, please feel free to share this video. So thank you all everyone again, and I will meet you all in my next video.